Assalamu alaikum. On behalf of Ahsan Academy, let me welcome you to a presentation on heart. I have divided the total presentation into three component parts, and this presentation is the part 1 presentation. Let me fix the objective. This part will contain the gross anatomy of the heart, that will include the position of the heart and external and internal features of the heart, and at every stage I will correlate clinically. Heart is the part of the cardiovascular system. It is the central pump and it is a hollow fibromuscular organ. During development, these are two tubes who fuse together and twist to form the heart. So this has become a complicated organ. The two tubes fuse together and the tubes are still separated as the receiving part and the outflow part of the heart. So it comprises of 4 chambers, the 2 chambers on the right side and 2 chambers on the left side, still remaining in the adult. Heart lies behind the sternum, body of the sternum, adjoining part of the costal cartilages and the anterior part of the upper ribs. This is obliquely placed. You can see the dotted line indicating the base and the oblique line indicating the direction of the position. The 1/3 of the heart lies on the right side of the midline and 2/3 on the left side of the midline. Is a figure showing the position of the base and apex of the heart, also its position in the mediastinum in the middle figure and the right figure. So this heart is situated in the middle mediastinum and it is obliquely placed pyramid with the base directed posteriorly and to the right, and the apex is directed to the left and anteriorly. The line from the apex to the center of the base of the heart projects posterolaterally, emerging near the right mid-scapular line. The heart has surfaces and borders, but these are not precisely demarcated. It has base and apex. Surfaces are sternocostal or anterior surface, diaphragmatic or inferior surface, and right and left surfaces. Those are known as pulmonary surfaces. This has superior border, inferior or acute border, left border, and also the right border. Sometimes it is called right surface. These borders are also known as margins of the heart. The surfaces shows demarcations of the chambers by some grooves. These are the interatrial groove. That groove separates the two atria on the surface. Atrioventricular groove that lies between atrium and the ventricles. Interventricular grooves that separates and that is present anteriorly and posteriorly to demarcate the two ventricles. The cardiac thorax is the junction between the atrioventricular groove and the posterior interventricular groove. Base of the heart lies posteriorly and it is quadrilateral in shape. it is directed posteriorly and to the right. In erect posture, it lies in front of the thoracic 6 to thoracic 9 vertebral column, and it is formed by the two atria. Two-thirds is by the left one. It extends from the pulmonary trunk bifurcation to the atrioventricular groove, which is also known as coronary sulcus. Relations of the base is clinically important. On the right upper figure, the shaded area is the base, and this area is covered by the pericardium. Here in this figure, the heart and the pericardium over the base is removed. So we can see the structure related to this base on the posterior aspects. These are in the posterior mediastinum. So you can see the total mediastinum here in this figure, and this includes the right pulmonary veins, the esophagus and the aorta. Of this area, behind this lies the 6 to 9 thoracic vertebra that already we have mentioned, and of these the esophagus and aorta are very important clinically, because the atrial enlargement, especially you see the base is formed by the left atrium, so enlargement of the left atrium traces the esophagus. This is the left atrium, and behind this lies the descending thoracic aorta and the esophagus. Esophagus is very close to the atrial wall. So in hypertension, left atria usually enlarges and presses the esophagus. You can see the radiological examination. The curved tube, which is white in color, is indented because of the enlargement of the base. That is, means left atrial enlargement. The clinical base and anatomical base is different, a bit different. You see, the parasternal part of the second costal cartilage is indicated as the clinical base. The apex of the heart, this is part of the left ventricle. It is formed by the left ventricle, and it is directed anteriorly and to the left. It is overlapped by the left lung and the pleura. This apex is located in the fifth left intercostal space. It is near or little medial to the mid-clavicular line, as indicated in the right lower figure. Upper border. The upper border is formed by the two atria, and it is mainly formed by the left atria. You can see the figure. The index finger is indicating the position of the upper border. So it lies behind the aorta and pulmonary trunk. The ascending aorta and the pulmonary trunk is there, and as shadow you can see the finger. The superior vena cava opens into the upper border of the heart. Right border is formed by the right atrium. The white line in the figure, in dotted line, indicates the right border. It extends from the superior vena cava opening to the inferior vena cava opening. It is slightly convex to the right, and often it is known as right surface of the heart. inferior border or acute border, the line, red dotted line is indicating the position of the border. It extends from the opening of the inferior vena cava to the apex, and it is mostly formed by the right ventricle and a little area anteriorly formed by the left ventricle close to the apex. It is sharper and thin and nearly horizontal in position. The left border is also known as obtuse border, and it extends from the left auricle to the apex of the heart. It is rounded and mainly formed by the left ventricle. It lies between the sternocostal surface and the left surface. It is convex to the left. Let us discuss the surfaces. You can see the figure. The anterior or sternocostal surface is indicated in the middle figure. This consists of the atrium, that is the right atrium, then the ventricular area includes 2/3 by the right and 1/3 by the left ventricle. Let me show by the arrow. The black arrow showing the atrial area, then yellow arrow indicating the right ventricular area, and the last dark arrow is indicating the left ventricular area. So the total surface is known as sternocostal surface. Sternocostal surface is related to the body of the sternum. You can see on the figure, in the two figures, this is the body of the sternum, and costal cartilages remains attached to this. 3 to 6 costal cartilage lies in front of the sternocostal surface. In the upper right figure, you can see the sternocostal surface gives attachment to the sternocostal muscles. So that is remaining in front of the sternocostal surface of the heart. In the figure, you can see in the right lower figure the long anterior border, and this covering means pleura anterior edge overlaps the sternocostal surface, keeping a central area free. Right surface, also known as right border, the arrow is indicating the surface. It is formed by the right atrial wall, and it extends between two vena cava. This surface remains in contact with the lung, which is separating it from the heart by pleura as well as pericardium. The left surface, you can see it in the left figure indicated by the black arrow. This surface is mostly formed by the left ventricle. A small area is formed by the left auricle. The figure is indicating the position of the phrenic nerve with the phrenic vessels. This structure remains related to this surface and is separated by the pericardium. The inferior surface is also known as diaphragmatic surface. This is almost horizontal and gently slopes anterior-inferiorly towards the apex. It is formed by the two ventricles, mostly by the left ventricle, and this lies on the central tendon of the diaphragm. Heart contains 4 chambers in it, and these chambers has variation in the features present inside the cavity, inside of the wall, as well as there is change in features of the wall. Circulation within the heart is shown in this figure. Superior vena cava as labeled as SVC and inferior vena cava labeled as IVC carries blood from all over the body and drain it into this right atrium, which is shaded with the color. Then from the right atrium, blood enters into the right ventricle, pushing the right atrioventricular opening, which is guarded by tricuspid valve. From the right ventricle, blood enters into the pulmonary trunk. This pulmonary trunk is guarded by a semilunar valve. So through this pulmonary trunk, it enters into the lung. From the lung, via two pulmonary vein of each side, so total 4 pulmonary vein carries blood from the lung to the left atrium. This is also shaded. The blood from the left atrium enters into the left ventricle through the left atrioventricular opening, which is guarded by the mitral valve. So from the left ventricle, blood enters into the ascending aorta. Through this aortic system, blood is circulated throughout the body. The right atrium is labeled on the left figure, and on the right side this is shown from the back, and this is a part of the base is clearly visible and inferior surface visible here on the right figure. This right atrium forms the sternocostal surface. You see this is on the left figure. The right surface of the heart, it is also known as right border, and this is forming the part of the base. The black arrow is showing the right border. This black continuous arrow line is showing the base of the heart. This atrium has a small projecting part from the main part. It is known as auricle, and this is shown by the labeling. This is a conical projection from the main atrial part. It is also known as appendage. This venous part and atrial proper is also separated on the surface by a linear groove. This is known as sulcus terminalis. The structures, the veins that opens into the atrium includes the 2 large vena cava carrying blood from almost all areas of the body. Some small veins carries blood and from the heart and drain it into right atrium. That includes the largest one is the coronary sinus, and other small, this white arrow is indicating the coronary sinus. The black arrow indicates the anterocardiac vein. It may be more in number. The minimal atrial veins, these can happen anywhere on the atrium, and their number is not fixed, and get a separate right marginal vein that opens directly following the acute border into the right atrium. Interior of the right atrium is divided into 3 distinct parts, and every part has embryological background. The smooth part, which is labeled here, is larger part and it is posterior in position. The part close to the tricuspid opening is the vestibule, and the appendages is the projected part. You can observe labeled by the arrow. The anterior wall is reflected here and observed from the anterior aspect. The venous component, you can see, originate from the sinus venosus
embryologically, and it is smooth wall, and vena cava superior and inferior vena cava open into it. This is the inferior vena cava, and this is opening of the coronary sinus, and this is opening of the superior vena cava into the smooth part. The inferior vena cava is larger than the superior counterpart, and the flap-like fold of the endocardium means the inner layer of the heart form the Eustachian valve or valve of the coronary sinus. You can see in the figure, this is the valve of the inferior vena cava, and this is known as valve of the coronary sinus. These are actually a fold of the endocardium. This is not complete valve. This is inferior vena cava, and this one is the coronary sinus shown in the figure. Cristoterminalis is present inside wall of the right atrium. This is a muscular ridge, C-shaped in nature, that separates the smooth part from the rough part and the appendage. This produces a sulcus over the outer surface, which we already have shown in the previous slide. This is known as sulcus terminalis. The musculi pectini are the ridges extending from this crista terminalis, and it lies in the appendages and in the rough part. These are parallel ridges produced by the cardiac muscles and covered by endocardium. Septal wall has some features who are carrying the embryological background. A depressed area, oval in shape, and it is superior and to the left of the inferior vena cava opening. This is developed from the septum primum, and this area is thin. Its superior border has thickening, and this prominent margin is called limbus fossa ovalis. The vestibule is the large oval anterior inferior part leading to the tricuspid opening. The cos triangle is indicated by the arrow. This is the between the septal cusp of the tricuspid valve, tendon of the thorax, and ostium of the coronary sinus. So this together encloses one triangular area which is indicated by the arrow, which is known as cos triangle, and it is indicating the site of atrioventricular node. Deep to the endocardium lies that node. You can see this is the tricuspid valve. This one is the opening of the coronary sinus. This is opening of the inferior vena cava. This is the oval area, limbus fossa ovalis, the valve of the inferior vena cava, and this is the tendon of Tourado. So this tendon of Tourado and this cusp, this is the triangle of the Koch. It is the anatomical landmark where the AV node is situated deep to the endocardium. Right ventricle forms the, you can see the arrow, sternocostal surface, and it is forming most of the part of the sternocostal surface, and inferiorly it is forming the diaphragmatic surface of the heart. This inferior border is mostly formed by the right ventricle. The interior of the right ventricle has the initial part shown by the arrow, red arrow. This is the inlet compartment. It is guarded by the tricuspid valve, and the blood first enters from the right atrium into this area. Then the main part of the compartment is coarsely trabeculated and it is closer to the apical part, and then blood enters into the pulmonary trunk through a muscular outlet. This is known as infundibulum, shown by the third arrow and the right upper part. This is guarded by the pulmonary valves and it controls the entry of the blood from this compartment into the pulmonary trunk. This is the interventricular septum, means the wall that lies between the two ventricles. The interior of the right ventricle, the wall is relatively thinner than the left ventricle, and when we take a section crossed right angle to the long axis of the heart, we'll get the lumen of the right ventricle is a crescentic in shape. The wall thickness is 1/3 of that thickness of the opposite side, means left ventricle. You see, the thickness of the wall is because the pressure against to his the left ventricle has to pump is much higher than that on the right side. This is the tricuspid valve that forms that guards the inlet of the right ventricle, and this one is the pulmonary valve that guards the outlet of the right ventricle. So far we have got the idea that the cavity has three component parts. The inflow part that is close to the tricuspid valve. The main cavity is there, that is rough walled cavity, and the outflow part is close to the pulmonary trunk. The wall inside has some special features. Those are known as trabeculicornae. These are irregular muscular ridges, bridges, or protrusion. Ridge means total area is elevated. Bridge means two ends of the elevations are fixed but mid part is free, and protrusion is one base is attached and apex is free. Papillary muscle and the septo-marginal trabeculation will be discussed in detail here. This is the inflow part of the component. This is the main part. This is trabeculated, and you see this is the outlet component part of the cavity. This is relatively smoother. This is called infundibulum, which can be identified from the outside also. These are the papillary muscles. You can see this is tip is free and chorda tendineae is attached to it. So papillary muscles are the muscular protrusion from the ventricular wall inside, and this in the right ventricular cavity, the anterior one is the largest of the three. Three are prominent. There may be very small more papillary muscles. One end of the papillary muscle remains fixed to the ventricular wall and other end remains free, to which the tendinous structure is attached, known as chorda tendineae. Other end of the chorda tendineae remains attached to the free margin of the valves, cusp. This is cut edge of the papillary muscles shown. This is the chorda tendineae shown by the septo-marginal trabeculation or septal band is an important structure that breeze-like band that the attached base is attached to the septum and runs towards the apex of the heart. Here the base of the anterior papillary muscles lies, so it connects the septum with the base of the anterior papillary muscle, which is the largest papillary muscle. This is known as moderator band. This moderator band contains the right atrioventricular bundle of conducting system. This is the septal band. You can see it's running between the septum and the base of the anterior papillary muscle. This actually containing the right atrioventricular bundle, and that's why it is clinically important. Left atrium is smaller than the right atrium, and it forms the major part of the base of the heart, and its wall is relatively thicker than the right one because the pressure of the blood inside is higher than the right side. The cavity has three component parts: the part that receives venous blood, then the vestibule that is close to the mitral valve, and a rougher appendices that is the auricle. You can see two veins, superior and inferior pulmonary vein, running from each side. This is coming from the lung, opens into the venous part of the left atrium. Left ventricle is the powerful pump of the high pressure systemic arterial circulation. This is the wall is very thick, and you can see this is the long narrow than the right one. On section already we have shown that the left one is crescentic, but the thick wall left ventricle is rounded. You can see in the figure that this left ventricle is forming the sternocostal surface, small part on the left side, and left and inferior surfaces. The left border or obtuse border is also formed by the left ventricle. This is the inlet shown in the figure. So this is close to the mitral valve. This part of the ventricle receives blood from the corresponding atrium. This is the outflow part that is close to the ascending aortal opening. This is relatively smoother, and the main part is a trabeculated compartment. This is close to the apex of the heart. Two papillary muscles are prominent here, the anterolateral and posteromedial. Right atrioventricular opening. This is connecting the right part of the heart, means right atrium, with the right ventricle. This is opening towards the ventricle only, and it is roughly triangular in nature as shown by the arrow. It is guarded by the tricuspid valve. Three cusps are there, and anterior, superior, inferior, and septals are the three cusps. Left atrioventricular opening is between the left atrium and the left ventricle. It allows the flow of the blood from the atrium to the ventricle, and this is relatively smaller and circular than the right one. It is guarded by the two cusp valve. This is known as mitral valve. The name comes from the cap specially wear by the religious persons, and this type of caps are known as mitre. So from there this name came. It's a paired structure girding this, and as per their position they are usually named as anteromedial and posterolateral. A small accessory valve may be present between these two. The outflow opening of the right ventricle is guarded by the pulmonary valves. The blood enters from this area to the pulmonary trunk, pushing this valve. They are three in number and present at the summit of the infundibulum. They has three semineural leaflets, and the zone where the leaflets may are a bit raised, as shown in the figure. The right arrow is showing the outflow opening of the right ventricle. Outflow opening of the left side is the aortic opening, and it is guarded by the aortic valves. This is 3 in number of the similar type already we have discussed. The margins that meets each other is elevated too, and this difference is the ascending aorta shows some dilatation against each valve, and this is known as aortic sinuses of Valsalva. This you can see here in this figure on the left side. The prominent dilatations are there in the beginning part of the ascending aorta, and the upper limit of each sinus extends beyond the free margin of the valve, and from these sinuses arise the coronary arteries. Thank you very much for remaining with the presentation.